Hello from Becky and me. Welcome to Friday's Anglia tonight. Once again, we're dominated by that freezing weather.
Today's Arctic conditions have played havoc across our region, particularly for our schools. More than 1,200 remained closed today, meaning tens of thousands of children missed another day of lessons.
But was it really necessary for all those schools to close? Well, many parents think not. And they're concerned that with the weather expected to get worse next week, their children's education could be severely affected. Lorna Ramsey has our report now.
You've got to admire their optimism. But for staff and pupils at Wicklewood School at Wymondham in Norfolk, this isn't quite the start to the spring term they'd hoped for. It's one of 1,260 schools across our region that remain shut today. But are all the closures necessary? Philippa Netcher from Bletchley in Milton Keynes doesn't think so. Her daughter's school, Eaton Mill Primary, has been closed for 3 days, and it's hitting the family's pocket.
If I have to go to work on Monday and the school's still closed, we can't afford childcare at all. And, you know, our parents are elderly and we have to drive quite a distance to get to them, so, you know, they can't look after a case here. So it's one of us staying home and losing money. Surely they could have had a skeleton staff, and those who can walk to school, you know, do it. Fine, go ahead and, you know, open it up.
Hundreds of parents in Essex are in the same boat. New Rickstones Academy in Whittam was among 372 of the county's 580 schools that shut today. Education chiefs say they're speaking to head teachers to make sure the closures don't continue into next week.
Whilst we understand that perhaps, you know, if there's a day or two of snow, it's reasonable for a school to close. If this cold snap's going to carry on for the next few weeks, we can't have a situation with well over half the schools in the county closing.
With so many schools across the region closed, how come this school in Turling near Chelmsford managed to stay open? All the staff at Turling C of E Primary School made it in, and so did more than half of its 107 pupils. Do you think some schools could make more of an effort?
I'm not really going to comment on that because schools have different locations. I mean, we are a rural location, but the roads have been gritted, so we feel safe. But all schools are different and all schools have different reasons. It depends on the distance staff have to travel, and I think all schools have to make their own decision.
The National Union of Teachers say closing a school is never an easy decision for a head teacher to make.
Schools have real responsibilities for health and safety. They're responsible for the safety of children under the inspection regime as well as under law. The side roads where the entrances to the schools are like skating rinks, and that's very dangerous in many cases. And also there's a really big issue about teachers not being able to get into school as well, because many live quite a long way away from the schools themselves.
Many head teachers feel they can't win when it comes to school closures, and no doubt the debate will go into next week as the cold snap continues to bite. Lorna Ramsey, Anglia News, Bentley near Ipswich.
Well, joining us now from his Suffolk home is Chris Harrison, the regional representative for the National Union of Head Teachers and head teacher at Alton Broad Primary School. Mr Harrison, thank you for joining us tonight. Is the weather really bad enough to justify closing so many schools and deny tens of thousands of children another day's learning?
I think I have to agree with the previous interview that you've just undertaken, where the conditions for individual schools may vary from school to school. Certainly when you live and work in a rural environment like East Anglia, many of the children and many of the staff are having to travel some distance to get to schools. Particularly, of course, with secondary age children, many of those children are travelling on coaches. And the coaches going around and around the village roads, etc., are finding that they're just not gritted.
I understand your point there, Mr Harrison, but Becky and myself, we both live in rural areas. We manage to drive in, we've seen others. It's a level of consistency, isn't it, that you can go past one school, which is apparently closed, and another one just a mile up the road, which is open. And that is a problem that you've faced because parents see that.
And the difficulty remains that it's an individual decision in an individual school. My own school this week, we remained open for 4 of the 5 days this week because all of the staff were able to somehow manage to get to work this week. Last night, the temperatures dived to such a low level, plus the level of snow itself was, I think we would all agree, quite exceptional. And this morning, many schools found that they just could not adequately staff their premises for the day.
But of course it costs money if your child stays at home. You have to stay at home with them, so you can understand why parents are angry. What about using skeleton staff? We heard a lady earlier talk about it. Is that a possibility?
Skeleton staff is a possibility if you can get enough staff who live locally enough to manage to get into the school. We have seen a situation, though, haven't we, this year where main roads, major roads, have been gritted, but at the expense of the access routes to schools and side roads not being gritted. Therefore, it really has presented a difficulty and a challenge to get to schools this year.
All right, Chris Harrison, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We'll let you get back inside now, and good luck for next week as well. So then, what's the situation for travellers this evening then, and what should we expect over the weekend?
There's concern that some local councils could run out of grit for the roads in the next few days because of the new government policy to divert supplies to where they consider to be the more needy areas.
Well, Emma Baker has been monitoring the travel situation throughout the day. Joins us now from the A14 in Cambridgeshire. Emma, so how have we been coping then?
Well, things are running pretty much smoothly OK at the moment, Jonathan. You can see from the A14 here in Cambridgeshire behind me, that's running pretty much OK at the moment. From these pictures here, A11 in Norfolk, again, those main roads have been gritted, so the cars are managing to run reasonably smoothly. Norfolk and Suffolk, now they have been particularly badly hit by the snow, I should say, though, particularly in Suffolk. On the A14 there, we are having a few problems around the Ipswich area, even going back to Bury St Edmunds there, very hazardous conditions. I see lots of snow, so do be careful if you're going out and about there. Again, in Suffolk on the A12, quite a few broken down vehicles there causing a few problems. So, again, do take care if you are out and about on all those roads, particularly there in that area. On the trains, you can see from the information here on the screen, quite a few trains are running a revised timetable. Today, it's been relatively OK, but if you are going to be travelling tonight or tomorrow over the weekend, do call that hotline number there to check and see whether your train is running OK. On the airports, Luton and Stansted, they've been running OK today. They're hoping to be running again OK over the weekend. Of course, that is all weather dependent.
And Emma, what's the latest on those concerns about some councils running low on grit?
Well, absolutely, Becky. Yeah, I have to say the grit situation for some of the councils really is getting very serious indeed. For some of our councils, they really are running very low. I was talking to Milton Keynes Council a little earlier on. They're just down to just a few days. A lot of that is to do with the fact that government has now stepped in and nationalised the distribution of grit to make sure the counties in the country that really are the most desperate get the grit that they need. But that does mean the councils, such as Norfolk, for example, that have ordered their grit well in advance, well, they may not be getting their deliveries when they were expecting them.
In some ways it is frustrating. On the other hand, we have to accept that other parts of the country are far worse off than Norfolk, and we just have to hope that we're given a fair share, if you like. It is frustrating, but as I say, we have to accept that other places are worse off than Norfolk.
It's a very difficult situation for many of the counties. They're really having to eke out their salt to try and make it last as long as possible. And, of course, the weather forecast is not good. It is going to stay very cold for at least the next few days yet. So they are in a pretty difficult situation for many of those counties there.
Emma Baker, thank you.